Well, good evening, everybody. I thought I'd get on here today and say a few things and get a perspective on what's going on around the world right now and some things I've been kind of listening to and hearing um, that is kind of floating around in the atmosphere, if I could say it that way. Some things that have been, it's kind of been popping into my spirit, and I'm going to give you an unformed revelation, I think is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off today with an unformed revelation. How about that? Because I think there's things that happen in particular seasons and times and things like that you know, frequency of heaven coming to earth is sometimes a difficult thing to read because so many things trying to justify prophetic words, trying um, to make it all marry into the world what we knew, but the reality is we're being introduced to a new part of the kingdom that the world has never known. So how does that all come together? And there are things that I think that you begin to kind of look back, just even when you look at the things that Jesus went through, just to get here and trying to, get a new reality into a realm called earth. Even though there's many prophetic words on the value of when there's going to be a coming Messiah through the Old Testament, all of a sudden when all of a sudden it happens, it just comes kind of like nobody's prepared for it, or everything else is, if I can say it this way, everybody's into a rhythm of life that they don't recognize when his arrival was, except for some shepherds out in the field, and then some strange things that happened to a woman called Mary, that she ends up conceiving a savior without knowing a man, which is all this stuff is just doesn't jive with the natural realm. So I had a thought the other day. I thought I'd like to share it with you and see how I kind of process through with you out loud. And it's kind of like you watch the value of what God's trying to do, because I know we all want a new thing of God. Yet, there's a lot of, if I can say it this way, perceptions or precepts that we think God should do or what he's going to do. And when he arrives in a way that we don't know what to do with that, or we've never seen that or even thought about that, what do you do with that? Anyway, that being said, I wanted to get on here and just maybe go for a few minutes and just kind of flow. I think I'm going to go back for a minute. Let's just take this whole, because I know there's something coming that's, unprecedented. And, the crisis reveals the core, which I've said for, many, many times over and over again. The crisis reveals the core. However, I'd like to go back to something that I kind of hit me the other day. And again, I said it's kind of an unformed revelation. So I'm just going to flow with it for a minute. And it's this idea and this concept that we have this whole process that Mary goes through in receiving the revelation she's going to birth the Messiah, right? And she has this it's a private meeting really between her and the angel, and this is what's going to happen. Outside of that, there's not, a whole lot that goes on after that. We obviously have a John the Baptist is before conceived in Elizabeth, and Mary comes, and that whole thing. But here's what I find fascinating, if you can just go here with me for a minute. One of the things I was kind of thinking about, when Mary was getting ready to deliver, listen to the words very carefully, deliver the next move of God on the earth. So Jesus is in the womb of Mary, and she's pregnant. She became pregnant in an unusual way. And I think this is some things that we need to take to heart, because we've been, for those that have been waiting on God, that stayed, if I can say, focused, set aside, doesn't matter what the world's doing, I'm staying in the realm of how God wants to move. You've become pregnant with the next move of God. And what I mean by that is you've had intimacy and worship, prayer, intercessory prayer, all the things that have been going on, but now you're pregnant and you're carrying this next move of God. Here's what's crazy about it. And when you begin to kind of look at it, you begin to understand some stuff. She's pregnant with the Messiah, Jesus himself. And so they begin to get near the time to birth, but it says that they were looking inside the inn, or they went to an inn, and they were all full. Now let's think about that for a minute. They were all full, and she was looking for a place to deliver deliver what she was pregnant with, but what was known as the norm of where to go, it didn't have room to receive the new thing. Ooh, I'm saying some stuff right now. She was looking for a place which was known or what was usual to birth the new thing of God. But reality was it wasn't there. It was full. That means the inn was full, was something that didn't allow itself for the next move of God. Just kind of moving on this, just kind of with, if you're feeling things and you're pregnant with a thing of God and the next move of God, yet there's no room for the new move of God, they had to go somewhere different, unusual, in order to deliver what she was carrying. And so I think a lot of us right now are carrying things inside of us, but where we're currently at or what has been known, there's no way to deliver it there because the rooms are full of something else rather than the receptivity of the next move of God. Now, that's not true everywhere, but I could probably bet a lot of places are like that. And what this crisis has done across this global platform is that we begin to see some things that we're carrying a pregnancy. We've gone through some stuff. We got pregnant with a new thing from God. Don't know exactly what it's going to look like, just like Mary didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, right? And so you begin to realize there's some things that are kind of moving along here that you're just going, man, where do I deliver this at? Because what I'm carrying I know is different than where I've come from. It's not the normal thing. There was no room at the end. Listen to it very carefully. There's no room. A couple different ways. Obviously, the literal, there's no room, but it also it transcends into this realm of where I'm currently at, is there room for the new thing of God? What am I saying? There might be a cause here to go somewhere else to birth a thing that you've been carrying. And I might be talking to some different people here right now, but there's some things that are happening that have happened to you in an unusual manner of moving with a new thing of God, because, we all carry certain things that we desire from God, and all of a sudden God, fulfills the value of what you've been asking for. But where you are does not have the space to deliver where you need to go. I'll say that again. Where you are does not have the space to where you need to go or where you need to deliver the next thing of God. So Mary's carrying Jesus, obviously, and there's no room at the inn, and you realize, okay, the inn is filled with something else other than the expectation of the next move of God. So they had to go somewhere different in order to deliver what she was pregnant with, all from heaven. Earth was not ready for it in the natural realm, so to speak, or the connotation or the overtone of that is what was known as normalcy to deliver the next thing of God. It was not receptive, or it was so full of other things that there was no room for the next move of God. Therefore, they had to go somewhere else that had to make room for the kingdom, or had room to receive the kingdom for the next move of God. We know the story. It's amazing that when God was all this time waiting on humanity to receive him, right, in the prophetic realm, yet when he arrived, there was nothing there. Nobody was there in receptivity to the value of what was happening as far as in the natural realm. Now, when you begin to kind of look at this, you're just going, wow, man, there's some stuff here. Yes, there is. There's some stuff here that you begin to realize when we don't have room for God, or we have a preconceived idea what room we should see God in, it's going to probably move outside of that normalcy of that room. It can come in the form of mindset, tradition, habits, disciplines that you've done for years and years and years, and all of a sudden it shifts, it changes. It's never, usually when I see God show up, it's never in a way that's in the normal realm, so to speak. And I guess as much as I'm saying the inn was full of things that were not available for God to move in, it went outside that realm. I think there's a lot of things that are going to happen in the coming days that are God's moving some things. And I'm not here to say, things are going to get really bad. I'm just saying that there's been a lot of bad things that have been exposed, and that the next move of God is about ready to be birthed, but we can't expect it in the normal places or in how the normalcy of our life was moving in a rhythm per se in order to receive a new thing. You're going to have to step out of the room that you think is normal, or God will take you out of that room, or you're going to be pulled into a room that somebody else birthed, and it might be a little crazy. uh, hectic, if I can say it that way, in order to receive the new thing of God. There was no room at the inn because it was full of something else. So he had to go somewhere else to bring the reality of himself. That being said, humanity was not waiting on God, or I should say it this way, Jesus was waiting on humanity to open up something for him to be birthed into. Now, I know I'm kind of just rolling here and just kind of free-flowing here for a moment, but I would like to just suggest some things here. Interesting enough, you'll find out through the scripture, what caught my attention was this. There are things that happen along the way in Jesus' movement on the earth in these 3.5 years of ministry, I should say. That's what I want to kind of dial in. It says he entered the room. He entered the room. So he obviously got into places where either, he entered the house and Peter's mother-in-law was sick, and so he touched her and the fever left her. Jesus entered the room. The child was dead, and so he moved everything out of that room except for the parents of that child. Now, there's a message in that in of itself. But then it says, he raised her up. And so you begin to see he's entering rooms. He's entering rooms. He's entering rooms. Because when he arrived, there was no room. But as he was moving on this earth, there was room. And I'm just kind of messing around with this in a way that I'm just going, isn't it fascinating that when Jesus came to this earth, there was this reality of he's expecting somebody waiting on him to offer a room to him, but there was no room to enter. So he ends up going outside of that realm, gets born amongst the animals, and you begin to realize, okay, you begin to see as he grows into the value of his ministry, he then begins to enter rooms. And I was thinking about this, and I'm going, it's fascinating to me because everything he does, it's like there's an exchange or there's an intent that gets revealed. Because then Jesus, as he begins to leave this earth, after he was crucified, resurrected, and was ministering for 40 days, one of the last things he says on the way out, he goes, I want you to go do what? I want you to go wait. I want you to go wait. There you go again. I'm going to go have you wait and be endued with power from on high. And so where did they go? They went into a room. And so they entered into his word so he can enter them at a different level of the word, meaning he asked them to go make room for the next move of God. And you begin to realize there's places that happen in our lives that we have to make a room for the next move of God. We're going to have to, what we thought was, he didn't say go to the synagogue. He didn't say go do this. It says you needed to go wait. So they gathered in a room. And so you begin to realize there's places in God that he says, I need room. Listen to me carefully. I need room in order to express the next thing of what I want to do on this earth. Not the room that you've been in, but a different room so that you can receive me in, because I'm coming in at a different level. And I think you're going to see some moves of God that are going to be very explosive. And people will question what's going on here. How come it's coming out of this place and not this place? And why does it look this way and it doesn't look that way? And you just, this whole thing, because, as he's moving across this earth in his ministry, also says, in my Father's house, there's many mansions. And, a lot of people like to say, there's this whole thing about, he's going to build me a mansion in the sky and I'm going to live there forever. And that's what that means. No, that's not what he's implying there. And the way I see that is there are many rooms inside of him. Jesus said, I'm going to go prepare a place for you. Okay, good. And so that's what happens. He prepares us inside of himself, him and the Father as being one. There's preparation for different entrances into the reality of the mansions that are in him that we can explore at levels that we've never even thought about or dreaming about. And again, I'm just kicking this stuff around. I'm just going, well, look at that. There's the stuff that we begin to realize there's going to be places that God's going to move us into in rooms or mansions that we have never, ever seen that if I can say the manifestation, we may have some imagination, but the manifestation of the explosiveness of how big he really is, how powerful he really is. Because I know there's a deep cry in all of us to get things set back into order. And I noticed that there are things that there's times of the time. Have you ever noticed this? From the time you have something birthed in your heart to the point when you actually see it, there's sometimes this thing called time. There's a gap. There's a process. There's like, this is part of the making of a king. It's what I begin to realize years ago, and I think it was Lance or somebody. I picked this up from somebody, or I don't know. My point is this: when we see a shaking coming along, we got to reframe our thinking that something's bad or we've done something that is just like way out there off, and so now everything's shaking. That's not it. It's in Hebrews 12:27. It talks this. It says, "Now this yet once more indicates the removal of those things that are being shaken." As of things that are made, that things which cannot be shaken may remain. Meaning, there's things that are going to be shaken. There's going to be things, everything that's not of God is going to be shaken. So, what is God saying here? God is saying this. This is a promise. It's not a threat. I'll say it again. This, in Hebrews 12:27, let me read it to you one more time. Excuse me. Now this, yet once more, indicates the removal of those things that are being shaken, as of things that are made, that the things which cannot be shaken may remain. See, there's things that we understand that when things get shaken, God wants to see where your hope's at, because you're going to see things that are get birthed out of a crisis. You're going to see things that get birthed out of trauma or things that upset the normalcy of our life. And the absence, or if hope stays focused, what it will do is that it will begin to when hope stays in focus, it doesn't look at the discomfort and the contractions. What it looks for is the changing of the status quo. Let me just say that again. When you're in the shaking, when things are just really shaking up, it's when you have hope established, you're not looking at the discomfort and all the contractions that are happening like you would in a natural birth, but you're looking for the new thing that's coming. And that's what I'm looking for across the landscape. You're looking for, okay, where's this new reality going to land at? What room what do we need to build, or where is he going to provide, or what he wants to provide for us to put our focus on, I should say, to begin to move towards that room. What room does he need to be made for the next move of God? Where do we gather to unify? Where do we do that? I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's shifts that are going on in a lot of people. And what we saw in a lot of this is we see the unfolding of what's been shifty, if I can play on words here, inside of people that had leadership that were not solidified. They could say things, but they couldn't manifest things that they said. And when fear comes along, see, fear is the rehearsal of hell. Faith is the rehearsal of heaven. Fear is a rehearsal of hell. Faith is a rehearsal of heaven. Those that have faith have stood in this with a hope and understanding there's going to be a next move of God, and he's going to land. And let's make sure there's a room for him to land in. Not if it's not been conducive, which a lot of this whole pandemic across this global platform, you saw who was really ready for the next reality, because they're quick to shed anything that they were doing in order to usher in the new thing that needs to be birthed. And so hope in all of this, if you're staying focused on the value, because if you understand God, and if you really get it that God is good all the time, if you really get that, then your hope's been established. There's something new, a new status quo. Yes, there's been discomfort. Yes, there's contractions and all that have happened in this. But what is he about ready to birth? What's going on here? Because we don't want to stay focused on what is, the trauma of what the earth is going through, more than the beauty of what heaven's about ready to birth in the reality of earth, heaven to earth. So here's what I think has happened is a lot of times when we don't want to go through, I don't know if I should say this or not. Should I say this or not? I don't know. But I'm just kind of pausing here for a minute because I'm thinking, you know what? I wrote a few things down here. There's some things that happen. Okay, let me put it to you this way. Let's start here. What happens is I'll go to this reference. I've taught this before, but in the context of everything that's happening, be careful on what you name, what you call things, because if your hope is not established on the new thing of God, then you will be established on the discomforts and the things that appear that are not working. That's what you'll focus on. Now, hear me right in the balance of everything. Yes, we need to correct things that are out of order. Amen. However, I've also noticed that you'll probably have to step out of what you've known as things that are out of order and put in order what God needs to birth a new thing so he can set things back into order. Got that? Okay, so like in Genesis chapter 35, this is when Rachel's about ready to birth a child. I'm just going to read to you. Genesis 35, verse 16, and they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephraim, and Rachel travailed, and she had, listen to it, hard labor. And it came to pass that when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, that thou shalt have a son also. Something's about ready to come to pass. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, that she called his name Benani, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephraim, which is Bethlehem. Now, see, in travail, in when death is pressing on, she named her son Benani, which means the son of sorrow, meaning your focus, when death is bearing down on you, your focus is on what it's doing to you. But when you stay in the value of what is about ready to be birthed in this new thing that God's doing on the earth, he called his son Benjamin. Benjamin means son of thy right hand. So depending on how you have your vision and how you have your focus determines what's going to come out of your mouth and what you're going to name the season. Even when God says, I'm about ready to birth the son of my right hand, if you don't keep your focus right, when death is on you, then you're going to name it something that God never intended to become. And you will never see the value of what God's going to do in that season because you're not looking for it. You're somewhere else. So that being said, I think there's some powerful things to be understood in where God's moving in the next few months, days, weeks, however you want to say it. I think there's some things that are coming down the pipeline that is revealing a lot of things. I think a lot of people like to work, if I can say this, not work. They want the value of their destiny fulfilled by God through a promise, but they don't want to go through the process for the anointing to receive it. I'll say that again. A lot of people, when you get a promise or a prophetic word from God, they don't want to go through the process that's necessary to receive the anointing for that purpose or that word that was given from God. They want to use mercy or grace. Grace is probably the one I want to say. Grace is extremely powerful. Hear me right, but I've also seen it used really wrong, where they feel that, well, grace, God will give me grace, or mercy, or depending on where they're standing in God. They want it for free, is what I'm saying. I just get the anointing for free. That's what I get. And what you realize is that's not how it works. When you begin to realize there are things that you go through and processes, which I feel which the earth and humanity as a whole has gone through a process these last couple of years. And out of that, for those that know how to run with it right, you're going to find out that God's bringing a new level of anointing that's coming upon the people for those that have their eyes focused on the laws of life or the value of eternity and all the things that are being expressed and being exposed right now. And it's one of the things, maybe I'll just stop here for a second. And if you guys have been following this on forerunnersound.com, you've seen quite a few videos that I've done with, and currently still going through with Dr. Rennie about eternity invading time. And what eternity is doing is it's moving time dimensions or things that have time in them that are wicked and not a part of his plan. Those that understanding that we are ambassadors of eternity, it's moving time elements out of the way. It's moving it out of the way. Eternity is coming in time because eternity is the higher level. Time will always submit to eternity. Please understand that. Time will always submit to eternity. Always. Because in eternity is the eternal laws of life. In time, it can only see the moment that's currently in front of it. That's all it can see. It doesn't know any other way to look at things. But when you bring the value of eternity, time will submit because eternity sees the past, the present, and the future. Yet saying that, God speaks present future. He doesn't need to go to the past to try to prove himself about what he's about ready to do, unless you want to go back and be reminded of all the promises. Please hear me right in that. But there's things that I love about God. He talks to you present and to the future. Because when faith is made known, faith is in the now of God. Everything that God does is in the now of who he is. I know he says things and prophesies things outside of time, things that are coming. But the reality is, if you're going to establish yourself in the fullness of faith, you'll find that there's many times that Jesus said something and it says then immediately. Then all of a sudden it happened. It manifested immediately. Why? Because faith is now. And that's so powerful to understand that. And I think a lot of us are being challenged in our faith to maintain our eyesight or to sharpen it for even greater things that are coming down the pipeline, that you can actually, as a prophetic people, call in what is in the future into the now of God, or in the now in this moment. You'll see that repeated over and over in the Bible. There are things that God has gone outside of the time, whether it's in David's life, whether it's in the value of pulling something, the next move of God. Even when Enoch saw Jesus returning with 10,000s of these saints, right, in Jude, yet he's only the seventh from Adam. He's way outside of time. Where is he looking? He's in the eternal realm, because the eternal realms have the beginning and the end. So you have the privilege to see the end from the beginning. When is it? Now. If you want to see it, you can see it now. And so that's the power of understanding this realm, because it's beyond trying to process it through this carnal mind and this, in fact, not carnal mind, but logical mind, reason, because what God does is none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. All these miracles, none of it makes sense. So in order to make sense of what's going to be coming, you're going to have to step out of what you probably think in logic, and then begin to process through the value of seeing through his eyes, not the eyes that are trying to, or the events trying to move your eyes to something that's off. Anyway, bringing this back around for this room. And again, I'm just going to go back to, I think there's a lot of us that are pregnant with the next move of God, and we're looking for where God, and what room, what space, what atmosphere, what do we do to set the value. One of them, I believe, is obviously praying in the Spirit, worshiping in the Spirit, coming together in a company of people. And I think there's times that I think in this particular next move, it's not about one person getting it figured out. It's a corporate people, or a remnant of people that get it figured out, as it was in the upper room, that it begins to move collectively on some people. You just know when you know, or something's going on, and you begin to kind of swirl around. I don't know how to describe it. I just know that we have to get together and unify under it. Does that make sense? And so there's rooms, and so that what happens is that you begin to evangelize the atmosphere, is something I talked about. I believe that's what happened in the upper room. What did they do? They all heard what was necessary to do, but they begin to evangelize the atmosphere to usher in the next move of God. And when you send a signal from earth, because heaven looks to earth to see how it responds from heaven's heralding. I'll say it again. Heaven looks to earth to see how heaven is going to, heaven looks to earth to see the response from earth to usher in the new things from heaven. If we don't respond to heaven's reality, heaven's hands are tied, basically. It doesn't move until somebody agrees with it. Somebody has to agree with heaven on the way for God to move. And you can play the God sovereignty card all you want. The only thing that I see that's actually, quote unquote, a monumental thing that God did outside of man's permission was he flooded the earth. Didn't ask anybody for that. He did it to save man, so he can have somebody to agree with, so he can get the things from heaven to earth by agreement with somebody that's on the earth and has the authority to move and say, yes, I agree with heaven, and then heaven would invade earth. But when you don't agree with that, you know how many delays have been made by people that have disagreed with God, and how many times and how many decades we've been put on hold because somebody brought a violation to, or did not authorize God to come in and do things. It's not that God can't be sovereign. Hear me right on that. He can be. But the way it's set up is it requires somebody from earth to agree with what heaven is about ready to do in order to have heaven release what's in its hand to do when somebody shakes its hand from earth to heaven. It's the same thing as you begin to watch that whole process of asking God, what does this room look like? What do we need to steward? What do we need? And I think part of it is it's okay not to know, and you know or not to know, but if you're hungry for it, you're going to know. That's the power of understanding this. If you understand God, the way to stay in the edge or on the edge with God is always remain hungry for God. The minute you get filled with the last blessing or the abundance of the blessing you receive from him. And I've seen this over and over again, where one of the things that Derek Prince said to me years ago, or not to me, but I heard on a tape, it spoke to me. There we go. He said, it's much more difficult to maintain the value of the relationship with God when you're under the duress of what poverty's doing, or you're not in the abundance of God, versus being in the abundance of God and maintaining the hunger to get to the next level, because we relax and we set back and all that good stuff. Okay, that being said, I know I'm just kind of flowing today. I'm just kind of just being careful on not, if I can say it this way, an uninformed revelation. You just go, there's something going on about this room thing. And I just find it fascinating that if you have any inkling, or you feel like you've been carrying something for quite a while, and you're going to find yourself that when you get ready to deliver it, it might not be in the place as it was with Mary. She didn't have a place to deliver the next move of God, so she had to go outside of the normalcy of her routine of delivering a child in a place that had no familiarity. They're not designed to receive things, but it was ready to receive it because the end of normalcy, or the normalcy of where things were to be delivered, it was full as something else, to the point that it didn't have room for God to be birthed in that particular inn. That's what I'm saying. And then at the end, when he exits out, he goes, you go into a room and you go wait. So that all being said, I just wanted to share that really quick tonight, and not to go into some deep teaching, but I just thought, let's just do a good 30,000-foot overview and some things I just been kind of thinking about. But I really feel that there's going to be a house of prayer is going to come forward in a big way, because it's going to evangelize the atmosphere. It's also going to set the room for God to land in, or to birth something that's brand new. It may be messy. It may not be the way that you thought it should be delivered. Of course, every move of God is never in the perfection way we think it. It's always pretty much a hot mess, because nobody knows how to handle it, because they've never seen it demonstrated or manifest in this way. So that being said, the making of a king started off before Jesus was even out of the womb. Before he was out of the womb, you've got to understand something. The mom, or the birthing of the child, was looking for somewhere to deliver that which was the next move of God. I want to make sure that we're totally understanding that in the making of a king, one of the things you have to understand is that you come into this reality that we have plenty of room for him to be birthed here. So, again, that which is in your spirit, pray in the spirit, worship, live in a style of life that always has room for anything that could be happening in any given moment. It just, bam, and then it suddenly happens. Because there's a thing there you understand in Acts chapter 2, when they were in that room, and all of a sudden it says they were in one accord, they were all in unity. And it says this, and then suddenly. I believe there's some things that are going to be happening, and then suddenly, because somebody went into a room, evangelized the atmosphere, and God says, I'm going to answer that with a and then suddenly, because they have a place for the making of a king to be made known, or a birthing of a king in a place that they've never known. Now here comes a new reality that God wants to do on this earth. So that's what I wanted to share today, and I just really encourage you, if you want to watch some powerful things in moving in the eternity mindset into time that Dr. Rennie, I encourage, go back and watch the ones that are already established there on forerunnersound.com. Then I'd like to say this. I think on Fridays, well, at least this coming Friday, we're going through his book, Eternity Invading Time, catching some highlights out of each chapter and then just processing them. Because I really do believe there's some things that are going to be coming in on the earth that we've never seen before. And it's an interesting time, to say the least, but I encourage you, go back and watch that, and then watch again as we just keep going. Watch for the announcements on forerunnersound.com. Watch the unfolding that. And I think we're preparing for that room. We're not going to be full of something else that we miss the move of God, but we actually prepare for the next move of God in a room called Your Heart. Because I know one thing, God's got mansions in his. In my Father's, there's many mansions. So I think there's some stuff there that it's very powerful to understand that. I'm so humored by the people who think, oh, he's going to go there, he's going to build me a great big building, I can't wait to get there, da, 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 da. No, I think that's interesting thinking. It doesn't do anything for me, but it gives me revelation for understanding what he's about ready to do, because we built a room for him to land in. You with me on that? All right, you guys. I will be seeing you guys soon. Hope you got a little bit of something out of that, and maybe next time I'll have it fully formed, and we'll go from there. All right, we'll talk to you guys soon.